Hi everyone. So I am Bryce Lupoli, and I'd first like to thank all of you at the Breathe Institute for your help with me. I've had a lot of health issues for someone my age, and I've visited doctors all over the country to find specialized assistance. And the most frustrating experiences that I had in any of the appointments was meeting a doctor who wasn't able to listen to me or be compassionate. I never minded meeting doctors who didn't have the diagnostic or remedial skill to actually help me. I only felt disappointed and frustrated when they didn't open themselves to understanding me as a human. And my experience at the Breathe Institute has been the antithesis of those negative experiences. Your office has been amazing in your ability to connect as humans, and it's beautiful to watch your staff talk to one another, because we as patients can see that it's not just that you're trying to help the customer feel comfortable. It's really that you're trying to be the best people you can be, and it makes a huge difference as a patient. So thank you. So I wear several professional hats. The one I'm going to begin with is that of a classical singer, which is a very difficult profession to succeed in. And prior to meeting and working with Dr. Zaghi in the Breathe Institute, I was also a classical singer with a tongue tie, which is a very, very difficult professional niche to be in. I'd like to begin with talking about what singing is fundamentally, because if we don't understand what it is, then discussing how the frenuloplasty changed my approach to it won't have any context. So singing is fundamentally air being compressed by muscular activity in the abdomen, compressing the air in the chest cavity, going through the vocal cords, creating a fundamental vibration, and creating sympathetic vibration in resonant cavities in the body, primarily in the sinuses. And then vowels and consonants are different relative harmonic frequencies created by changes in the coordination of the larynx, the tongue, the lips, soft palate, and some other things, but primarily those parts of the body. Tambour is tone color. It is what allows you to differentiate between one voice and another. When you hear one person sing and you think that's a thin and rather mousy voice, and then you hear another person sing and you think sounds like the hills are rumbling, you're describing their timbre. So arguably what the most important contributor to timbre is the position of the larynx. And we have exercises to help with kind of cross-training the voice that play with low larynx and high larynx. So to give you an example of how the position of the larynx changes, when the larynx is high, the timbre gets thin and piercing. And one of the exercises that we work with is and you can hear that sound really pierces.
Yes.
That sound is what can carry over an orchestra. But it's not very pretty. A low larynx is richer, but it's harder to get the vocal cords to press together smoothly. So you're able to speak in a lower voice and air can pass through more easily. And it sounds a little more stereotypically manly, if dopey. But you need your larynx to be relatively low in order to have a richness to the sound. So this is an exercise to help each of you feel the movement in your larynx. If you find the part of your Adam's apple that protrudes the most, there's a little point, and then you go to the notch just above it, and then you take your fingers and put them directly behind that notch. You'll find there's a little indent that you can squeeze. And when you squeeze this, you're able to feel very easily where your larynx is. So when I go high, you can feel that the larynx is really hiked up here. And when I go low, it pulls my fingers downwards. So you can play with that in your own body.
Interesting.
So what do you think someone with a tongue tie might have? A chronically high or a chronically low larynx? Does anyone have any ideas?
Excess high.
Yeah, this is correct, because if you think about what the tongue needs to do to create consonants, many of the consonants, like L and S and T, the tip of the tongue needs to rise to the hard palate. And if the tip of the tongue is anchored to the floor of the tongue because of a tongue tie, the floor of the tongue will have to rise in order to make these sounds. And the floor of the tongue is attached to the larynx, and so the larynx will be pulled up. So I didn't know that I had a tongue tie for many years. I just thought that I had a particularly difficult voice because since I was in high school, I was an above average singer, but I wasn't exceptional. But I did have exceptional difficulty in some specific areas. Vocal fatigue, I would get tired so much faster than everyone else. And I worked harder on my technique to get rid of this, but still people who didn't work hard at all had a fine time. I also didn't have a very full low range or high range. And these are all symptoms of the cords being squeezed, the cartilage in which the cords are held being squeezed too tight, which happens when the floor of the tongue needs to be involved in making consonants. And when the cartilage is too closed, the cords are more likely to overcompress and cause fatigue more quickly. So I didn't know that any of that was going on until I started to work with Dr. Zaghi. Until I started to work with myofunctional therapist Barbara Green in Santa Barbara. But I wasn't able to discover the extent to which it was a structural problem until the frenuloplasty. So what changed immediately when I had the frenuloplasty is I had an ease of movement with my tongue, a sense of freedom that I had never experienced before. And especially with the rolled R, this had been something like the bane of my speaking existence and very difficult singing. And most of opera is in Italian. There are lots of rrr, and from you it's somewhere like which was really, really challenging. In classical voice, there's something called line or legato, which means maintaining vibration all the way through a phrase, no matter what consonants and vowels you're singing. There's always the fundamental buzz. And in order for this to happen, the air must be traveling through the vocal cords consistently, without interruption. And when I couldn't make this rrr, the sound would always be interrupted, and it was kind of like driving on a road and going off the side of the road and onto the shoulder and then trying to get back on. It wasn't as simple as being off and then I'm back and it's easy. Getting back onto the good path in the subsequent vowel was very, very challenging. So as soon as I had the frenuloplasty, I needed to practice serious restraint, even in the chair with Dr. Zaghi, because as soon as this was released, I wanted to go because I hadn't really been able to sing or speak on this before, and now I could go
That's good.
In fact, the rolled R allows for a steadier stream of air than most sounds. So where it used to be a huge speed bump, it became actually something that helps me in my singing. And I came to discover that almost all of the consonants that involved my tongue were improved. The back of my tongue was able to rest higher up in my palate at rest and making a k. How I used to make k's was by having the back of my tongue stay rather low and have it connect with the back of my lowered soft palate, which is really not what you want as a singer. You need the soft palate to be high in order for it to help be a resonant chamber. So, for example, Core, coren grato. That k, to start, I was already starting collapsed. It was very, very hard for me to start with the proper coordination. So that was immediately amazing. It felt like I was a concert pianist who had partially webbed fingers, and a third of my fingers were connected up to a third of their length connected with webbing. And I had managed to become a somewhat competent pianist, but it was always struggling and feeling tight. And then suddenly it's chopped, and I just couldn't stop playing with this easy octave. It's very difficult to explain just how satisfying this was. So not only did it immediately help with my consonants, it also helped with my vowels, because when the tongue is able to easily rest on the hard palate and the front of the soft palate, you're constantly getting innervation of those nerves on the soft palate and hard palate. And you need to be able to access those nerves and coordinate the soft palate in order to sing and speak well. It's something like if you're a child and you're always wearing very, very soft shoes all the time. So yes, you get some sensation, but it's always uniform and not detailed, which we know that quality of stimulation doesn't activate our nervous system as vigorously. But when my tongue is able to rest on the soft and hard palate, suddenly it's like my feet are in grass or on pebbles. And my soft palate started to develop more proprioception, like having a map be laid out in front of you and have sections of it be dark, and suddenly over time they just start filling in. I just have more sense of where things are. And the more sense I have of where things are, the more I can coordinate their use. After the procedure, my low notes immediately improved. On the car ride back to Santa Barbara, I was just playing with it, and I had a hard time finding what type of singer I was, what vocal fach I was in, baritone or tenor, when I was in high school, because I didn't have the low notes of a baritone, I didn't have the high notes of a tenor. I had enough range to sing musical theater, but not to sing opera. And I thought, okay, I just don't have, as I've continued to train, my high notes have gotten much better. It became clear to me 5 years ago that I was a tenor. But my low notes didn't get that much better. But driving, and I just thought, okay, so I don't have that good of low notes, not so unusual for a tenor. But driving back from this appointment, I felt how my throat had opened. And it was able to relax and be lower. And I just started to play with passing air through that chamber. And before I had the procedure, this isn't very low for a man, but for a tenor that's rather low. That's maybe a B flat. Before the procedure, a D flat, D, was the lowest note that I wanted to sing in a concert with orchestra, because it's not just about how much sound you can produce, it's whether the sound can carry, can cut with the this squealo is the name of the quality that carries through an orchestra. And so D flat was the lowest that I would want to sing. And within a week of having the procedure and playing with the changes in my voice, I felt I could comfortably sing in concert a full third below that, B flat. Maybe I'll have an A, which I should never need to use as a tenor, which will help me tremendously, because imagine you're a professional basketball player and you want to be able to shoot a good three-pointer. If the end range of where you can shoot from is right outside of the three-point line, then you will always feel like you need to get exactly there to shoot, or otherwise you'll feel uncomfortable, and you'll really be risking it if you're 6 inches back from that. Whereas if you become comfortable making three-pointers from 4 feet beyond the arc, suddenly you have this new range where you can feel comfortable in there. Even if you never want to shoot from 4 feet out, you know you have that option, so it gives ease of mind. It's something like that. So in the procedure chair, as the tissue was cut, I felt that this was a game changer, but I didn't know the extent. And it wasn't really until 2 weeks after that I had a better sense of the extent. I've told you all the things that changed positively, but a lot of things were persistent in a way that I had hoped they wouldn't be. For example, we want on a consonant, S consonant, to have the tongue be against the upper teeth and upper palate. And the way I had become accustomed to making it was pressed mostly against my lower teeth, the tip against my lower teeth, because it couldn't comfortably rise up, and a little bit behind the tip of my tongue up against the upper teeth. And this persisted. Making a t, making a d, making a l. All of these were easier, but my larynx still really wanted to hike up. And when I would sing, I would still deal with some vocal fatigue, less vocal fatigue, but some. Because what I learned was what you have learned in many of your practices. The procedure alone is very helpful, but if you want optimal results, it needs to be combined with, if you're just looking to have healthy breathing, healthy eating, myofunctional therapy. If you're looking to have healthy eating, breathing, speaking, and singing, specialized vocal exercises are necessary. So I'm still in the process of overriding a lot of that muscle memory because it's very strongly habituated after 26 years of life. But it's been tremendously helpful. I think if I hadn't had this procedure done, to give you a sense of just how important this was, if I hadn't had the procedure done and I had devoted my whole life to trying to be the best classical singer I could be, I think maybe I could have been a supporting role singer in a regional opera house. Maybe. Like, that is the peak. And after having this procedure, I feel that I have a lot of work to do, but I can be a world-class opera singer. Before I proceed, are there any questions?
I was wondering when you got the procedure done and if you felt any opening in your chest and clavicle as well. I've had kids talk about other places in their body they felt it when it got released. Mm-hmm. I was curious about that. And also if you've seen any changes in your face and your face shape.
Okay, so what I'm going to go into next for a little bit is how the rest of my body has been affected. Mm-hmm. I'm also a moving and stillness meditation teacher in a practice called Changzhen. Mm-hmm. And my experience with that and with singing in a more global way rather than speaking specifically about the head, mm-hmm. We'll cover that. As for my face shape, I think maybe it's become a little more square. I know that the musculature here has become a little more prominent, mm-hmm. and that my face is less dropped. Mm-hmm. It's like the tonus went from being more going down to more going up.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And when did you have it done?
I had it done in October, I believe.
Cool.
Any other questions about the singing?
So were you concerned at all? I mean, I know how fantastic everybody is here and like how the results are going to be just awesome, but as a patient, were you concerned that sort of like, you know, messing with your instrument was going to cause a problem?
Yes, I was.
Kind of scary.
I was quite concerned. I discussed the possibility of having this procedure with one of my movement teachers from a summer music festival that I was part of, and she looked at me and went, I don't know if you want to do this. You should really pay attention to who you're working with. But even then, it's risky. And when I found Dr. Zaghi online, I started reading some of his reviews online, and they have the same type of feedback that you all gave to him when you were making your introductions, of him being a hero of yours and just the kindest man and very skilled. And I intuitively felt that I was in the right hands. And then I made a consultant appointment with him just to have him take a look and see if he saw the same things that I was seeing, and if he thought it was a good idea that we go ahead with the frenuloplasty. And I agreed with the chorus that he is an exceptional doctor, and that if I was going to trust anyone with this, I would trust him with it. And I talked to him about the risks, and he said how low they were, but still, of course, I was concerned. But when I committed, I spent quite a bit of time in meditation, quieting myself and connecting to the tissue structure that I knew was going to need to be released, and willing it to release, and for there to be no problems. I know this is a little out there, but when Dr. Zaghi cut the tissue, he said, this is one of the best procedures we've done. It felt like you put intention into this. It just released. So, yeah, I was a little scared, and it was funny having the oxygen reader and heart rate reader on me to look down and see I'm at like 85 beats per minute, and normally I'm at around 60. Like, okay, yeah, my body is a little scared right now.
I'm very pleased that you've been treated by Barbara Green. Maybe not everybody knows her, but she's one of the most experienced myofunctional therapists, teacher of mine. She has always been ahead of her time by decades. So, you got the best.
Do you still see her?
I do still see her. I'm also working with Christine, Sophie, and Katzenmeier for more specialized singing work. Thank you for bringing Barbara up. I should have. I'm remiss to have not spoken more about her. We worked together for 7 months prior to my meeting Dr. Zaghi, and just working with her, I was able to significantly improve my singing and comfort speaking. And I credit her a lot with how quickly I was able to recover from the procedure, because I felt that my tongue was working at the best that it could be working at.
Have you done any breathing therapy like Buteyko?
Yes.
Controlled pause kind of thing?
Yes, I've worked with Patrick McEwen.
Oh, the best. Fabulous.
I worked with Patrick McEwen at a 4-day course in London last summer.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful. The controlled pausing for a singer, you need to be very precise, because if you try to push yourself too much, when your diaphragm starts involuntarily contracting, it creates some vacuuming in the throat, and I don't believe I would do any damage, but it doesn't prepare you well to sing soon thereafter. You need to calm and open the spaces again. But yes, it has been helpful, and it's been very helpful. Buteyko breathing has been very helpful in conjunction with Shangzhen meditation, to combining slow, graceful movement with slow breathing through the nose to help the body feel totally relaxed. When my tongue rests on my palate, at the point between the hard palate and the soft palate, there's some sort of enervation that happens that soothes the nervous system.
Got very intuitive. That's exactly right.
It's something like being a nervous child and having your mom put her hand on your forehead. I don't know how to explain it better than that, because it's a shifting of comfort in the whole nervous system, where when I put my tongue there, it's like I've been wrapped in a soft blanket. So that is, I think, part of the missing component in why a lot of people who have tongue ties don't breathe as easily and are more stressed out, as they're not benefiting from this stimulus. Pure theory on my part. So as I have needed to retrain my tongue to sing better, I've also needed to retrain my body how to breathe better, and body how to move better and stand better. And for me, Buteyko breathing has been helpful, but more helpful than that has been Shangzhen meditation. In my experience, people have a lot easier time consistently doing a breathing practice when it's something that they intrinsically enjoy, and people really are enjoying Shangzhen meditation. In my experience, trying to teach breathing meditation that focuses only on the breathing, students aren't as eager. So before bed, almost every night, and I encourage this with the Shangzhen students that I work with, we do a form called Shangzhen Healing, which, just to briefly demonstrate some of the movements, it begins with so the pace of the breathing is slow. It's not incredibly slow, but it's slow. And what happens with this moving meditation is that the body acts like a guide for the psyche. Just as we have people give guided meditations and talk to someone to keep them centered and focused, the body fills that role, where when someone focuses on moving smoothly and feeling very light, having there be almost no difference between when one part of the movement begins and one part ends, the mind starts to quiet and relax, and the breathing naturally becomes very slow and light, as Patrick advocates. And for changing posture, Shangzhen has been really powerful, because there are many different forms of the movement, and while yoga is really helpful, Shangzhen approaches correcting the body in a different way. They're very complementary to each other, but Shangzhen is a little more imitative of everyday moving life. So it's easier to, in my experience, have Shangzhen, improvements in the way you move in Shangzhen carry over to improvements in the way that you walk, in the way that you stand, in the way that you live your daily life. Most importantly, briefly on Shangzhen. Shangzhen means unconditional love, and in Chinese, and this is the essence of the practice, that when we are filled with love, the body is naturally relaxed. when we don't feel that, when we feel love for the people around us rather than feel judgment coming from them, the body relaxes. And this, I feel, is a vital component to life and a thriving medical practice. As I stated at the beginning of my speech, I'm very thankful for the way that this office has interacted with its patients, and whether it knows it or not, it is full of the Shangzhen spirit. And if anyone is interested in knowing more about formalizing that training, we have experience, the Shangzhen community has experience in working with different offices and corporations to help integrate the movements and spirit into the work that they do. And it's been invaluable for me. And that's all.
Really thank you, Bryce, for coming and sharing with us, sharing your unconditional love and gratitude. You remarked that it's not only about the medical practice, it's about the other providers and the therapy as well. But one really important component is the role of the patient. You really own your own health. You really own and invest in your therapy and your practice and your drive. And so I congratulate you for that. But I also thank you because for us as providers and those interested in research, we need teachers like yourself who are able to tap in and so articulately express the connection that you're experiencing so that we can make this information better available to other patients. So thank you for being our patient, and thank you for being our teacher and helping us to learn and grow.